Everybody gonna show up. We're gonna work it out.
Yes.
Okay, we are live.
Hey,
Hello. Hopefully it is notifying everybody that we are live today. This is my buddy, my people, Muffie Brandshaw, my first best friend.
I mean, so how special is that?
I mean, it's very special. Come on, we met at church.
We met full circle.
Come on, and come on.
Listen here.
And we still doing it. Come on, in the Lord's house.
Yes.
Doing the Lord's work. We are super thankful. Muffie is here with me. She is a ministry partner here at South Euclid United Church of Christ. Of course, I am Pastor Courtney Clayton Jenkins. And this is called The Push, where we try to just kind of push the text, walk with the sermon moment a little bit more. As many of you know, and I'm so glad that you're signing on. So would you please like, click, share, tell your people, and drop in the comments section, because it will pull all of our platforms together, and hopefully we will be able to share with you. But Muffie is a relationship coach, and does a lot of work around boundaries. And if you've been watching us here at South Euclid United Church of Christ, I've been preaching a sermon series through boundaries, not necessarily because I'm the best person at it, but because it really is, I think, required for next level living. And as we continue to move forward. And I also say, because you and I are about the same age. And so as we continue to move forward in all God has, I learn more and more how much boundaries matter.
They matter so much.
So let's start here. First of all, tell the people about yourself. Just tell them who you are, what you do. Let them know where do they find you. Let us know all that.
Yes. So hello, everyone. I am Muffie Bradshaw. And I'm so glad to be here. And thank you always for just thinking of me, especially around topics like this, because they're important to talk about.
They are.
So I'm Muffie Bradshaw. I'm a life coach and also a relationship coach who really focuses on boundaries in relationships, but relationships with self first, then others second. You all can find me on Muffie Bradshaw on all social media platforms. Just Google Muffie Bradshaw. I do have a really cool freebie on boundaries that you guys may find beneficial in my profile. So click on that on Instagram and follow me. I'd love the engagement.
Yeah, and she posts really rich content about boundaries. And one of the things I've been dealing with this, Muffie, is around we learn relationships by what we see and what we don't see, right? And I think it's, we can talk about intimate relationships. We can talk about relationships from parent to child. Relationships are everywhere. And I would just start with this question. Like we said, we're just going to talk. We're just going to figure it out. And if y'all got questions, comments, concerns, stress, or joy, drop in the comments, because that's what we're here for. But how have you learned and processed relationships yourself? Because you're an only child.
I am.
So talk to us about that.
So, relationships are, like you said, we learn what we learn, and we don't know what we don't know. And relationships really become how we operate day to day without knowing it. So it's interesting that you mentioned that we're the same age and we're still kind of navigating boundaries, but that's what we're supposed to do.
Come on,
right?
Say it again. That's what we're
supposed to do. As a coach, I don't get it right all the time, and that's okay, because I know I don't get it right all the time. So it's about the processing. What do boundaries look like? What do they feel like? And sometimes boundaries can be very, very restrictive depending on the environment you come from. Sometimes they can be very loose. So it's all about taking those experiences and using them for your good so you can navigate.
That's good. That's good. So what would you say, what is one of your personal boundaries?
Oh my gosh. So there's so many categories. So where do I even start, right?
You choose.
Okay, so with my relationships, one strong boundary that I have is let me share when I'm ready. And I think sometimes in our relationships, we feel obligated to share something just because of the closeness. But you know what? Let me process. Let me internalize. And when I'm ready and healthy enough to share, I will do that. And it's nothing personal. But when we really take intentionality with our self-work, we look at things differently. And we put ourselves first in the sense of, let me do what I need to do first so I can be more helpful and healthy in my other relationships.
That's really good. So number one, I love how you talk about let me share when I'm ready. Because one of the things I think I've learned in my life is, because you said something else, I'm going to link all these together. You said you don't know what you don't know. And I'm going to see even in my life where I said to my friend the other day, I was like, girl, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. It's like when you're young, you think you know everything,
Wow.
but as you get older, you realize, first of all, there's a lot of stuff I really don't know. And there's a few things that like now I know that I know that I know, but there's less that I know than what I know.
Yes.
Right? So I want to pair that with, I learned something about myself the other day. You know, somebody was like, okay, so how are we going to navigate this? And in the past, I would have put a boundary around something I didn't know, assuming that this is the direction it's going to go. Well, when none of that works out, I've already said, well, these are my boundaries. And it's like, oh my gosh, wait. I had no clue, right? But then it's what you said, like, but I had to say to that person, so this is like affirmation for me. Let's not put a boundary around that right yet. Give me some time to process it. You take some time to process it, and then let's come back and as we feel led to share. I am an empath, okay, which is something I've learned about myself. I don't know if that's you or not, but I am an empath. So I feel other people. So my challenge is I can feel people processing, and their processing often makes me uncomfortable because I can feel it. But here's what I've had to learn. It is invasive of me to utilize my gift when somebody's not ready to share. Now that's grown. That's grown.
Wow. Yeah. But yeah, so, and you know, it's so interesting because when we think about boundaries, no matter what it is, no matter where your journey is, it's all about the emotion, right?
Yeah.
So thoughts drive emotion.
Yeah.
Emotion drives thoughts. And you're right. Like, and so that is the process of making your boundaries it's more than saying no. Can we just say that?
That's
like,
it.
It's
say
more than
that.
saying no. Boundaries are a buzzword, and they should be because it's important to talk about. But boundaries take a lot of self-reflection, and sometimes it means, hey, I'm not ready to set this yet.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. Yeah. Let me think how it may affect my decisions and my interactions, and then come back to it.
That's good.
But it's all about the self-reflection.
Yeah.
Like we can't. Every choice we make starts with a decision. Like we have to decide to either be better with our boundaries, what those look like, how it interacts. It's just a circle. It's a full circle.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I am coming to experience, and I can see this in you. So I would say I've always been wired this way, but now more than ever, here it is. I'm doing my work.
Let's go.
I'm doing my work. I can't control anybody else. I can't make anybody else do their work. I'm doing my work. I'm doing my work as a daughter. I'm doing my work as a mother. I'm doing my work, you know, in all the different areas of I'm doing my work as a pastor. So I'm doing my work, right? And I talked about this with a girlfriend the other day, that when you start to really do your work, it can make relationships where people are not doing their work very difficult to stay alive.
Oh, yeah.
And because you're somebody who does your work, right? Can you talk to us about how that works for you? Because, and you know, sometimes people want to take this straight to dating, and it doesn't have to be. We can go there. But like in this friend I was talking to, she was like, yo, I do my work. And I have a close friend who's not doing their work. And what happens is like, now we have nothing to talk about.
Woo-wee. Wow.
Because they want to talk about people. And I want to talk about growth.
Ooh,
and so this is what I said in the sermon, right? We're talking about the same subject. We're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
That was so good in the way that you broke it down. Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting because when you do the work, your perspective shifts.
Woo!
And it's almost instantaneous in the sense of you're being so reflective, you're looking at it through a new lens, where you're going to be extra sensitized to the people who are not doing their work because you're not on the same page. Yeah. And again, that's like, you can't force anyone else to do the work just because you're doing the work.
That's it.
So that's when it comes down to making the decision.
Yeah.
It's always your choice. Yeah. It's always your choice.
Good. The other piece here is a fine line. I'm hearing this even in what you're sharing between boundaries and values.
Oh, goodness.
So my values inform my boundaries. And as you were talking that out, what I realized is I value people in my life who are doing their work. Yeah. That's not necessarily a boundary, right? But that's one of the ways that I can decide, is this somebody that I want to build a relationship with? Because, and I use this example like Charles Anthony Bryant, right? You know,
yes, we love him.
Right. Absolutely. But what I love about him is he does his work. And we talk frequently, you know, probably once or twice a week. And I hear him processing. I hear him fleshing this out. I hear him saying, I don't want to repeat past mistakes. I want to learn from this. I want to grow from this. And that is such a fulfilling friendship for me, because when I start to share my work, he gets it because he's done his work.
He gets it. And Pastor, you said something, oh my gosh, about the supporters, the pacemakers,
yes, the
right?
pacemakers.
And that would be an example of someone, right? Someone who helps you, who holds you accountable and says, hey, I know this is what you're working on. This is what it should look like. How can I support you? Or so even by their behaviors or interactions, just by default, since they're doing the work, by default, you're going to want to do your work also, if it's a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. So let's go through those things we're talking about. So we got an example of a pacemaker.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about pacemakers?
No, I feel like the example of Charles Anthony Drive was perfect.
Wonderful. It is.
I think it was perfect. Yeah.
And he's totally the person, even as I process things in the church, the music ministry, like I'll call them and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking of, this is what I'm dealing, what do you think? And he helps me think that out. Well, have you thought about this? Have you considered that? Look, here's some of the things you should think about. So absolutely a pacemaker.
Love that.
And I'm so thankful. Okay. let's do partnership.
Woo!
Talk to us about boundaries in where there's give and take, there's ebb and flow. You all are moving together. Talk to us about partnership.
So with partnership, and I feel like this is also like cross-categorical. You need to go like with any relationship that you have. Okay. The first step, and this is for people who maybe are struggling with boundaries or maybe don't even know how to start. The first question I would ask is, how does it make you feel? How does the relationship make you feel? What are your needs? And needs are very different from wants, but needs make you feel safe and not in a healthy way.
No, I got you.
Because sometimes, Rev, when you were saying in your sermon, you were saying that some people are just used to dysfunctionality.
Yes.
That may make you feel safe, but it is not good.
Come on here. Come on.
So please let us understand a healthy safety.
That's good.
So it's so layered. This is why boundaries are more than saying no, because you really have to think about your patterns and your experiences in your relationship. So that's my disclaimer. Not everything you think is safe is safe.
That's good.
But anyway, so your needs make you feel safe. So if there's something in your relationship or your interactions or your partnerships that aren't making you feel safe, first ask yourself, is this a safe, healthy feeling?
Good.
Right?
That's
so
good.
That's good. And then we transition to, like you were saying, Rev, the core values. So that's really what it boils down to. And sometimes we like to overcomplicate boundaries, but
no, you're right.
And I'm not saying that to be dismissive, but what I'm saying that for is, if we are solid in our emotions, if we're solid in what we know our needs are in a healthy way, in our core values, it's easy to know. It's hard to make the decision to move. Because once you set a boundary, you need to act on it.
That's good. So it's good. So boundaries, and oh man, let's deal with that. A lot of people set boundaries and don't even hold their own boundaries.
It's hard sometimes, but it's true. We got to work on it. Okay?
But we got to work on it.
We got to work on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in that, I feel like
action.
Yes.
It's
action.
a verb. It's a verb. Boundary sounds like a noun, but it's a verb. You have to act on it. You said this is what matters to you.
Yeah. And that's where the practice comes in. The practice comes in our action. Because we think stuff all the time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't, I could, I should, I do. But we have to decide.
That's good.
Right? So
that's good. That's
good. And it's a layered process, but it's doable.
Yeah. And I think what happens is in that partnership, each of you honor each other's boundaries and you respect the actions that come out of them.
Oh, that's good.
That's good? Respect the action.
Yes, respect the action. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes the action is like, hey, not right. Sometimes the action is verbally saying no.
Yeah.
It is.
Yes.
But, sometimes the action is, I'm not ready to process this. Sometimes the action is leaving that relationship with you.
Come on. Come on.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
Yeah. So it's on a continuum.
Yeah.
But that's up to you to figure out what that action will be. Yeah. So you won't feel like your boundaries are being violated. But it's always up to you.
And I want to bring it back to how we talked about today. Like, you have to love yourself before you love your neighbor. And a lot of times I have struggled with that niceness factor, that likeness factor. And as you come into adulthood,
come on here.
To this full adulthood, you be like, oh, it ain't personal, it's just my boundary.
That's it.
It's not personal. And how someone responds to your boundary tells your value, tells you your value in their life.
Ooh, that's so good. That's so good.
How you respond to my boundary helps me know where I fall in your life.
Right.
And it is a matter of I have to love myself before I love someone else. Or sometimes it's that I actually love myself enough to not continue in something. It's not personal. It just is where it is. But it is at the end of the day. It shows so how people respond shows me where I fall, but also how I set the boundary shows them where they fall. And sometimes people don't like where they're placed. But the reality is, and I go back to the sermon from last week, if you're going to move into anything beyond an associate, right, then you have to earn the title of being more than that.
That's it. That's
to
it.
earn that title.
That's it.
Because we just give it out too freely.
We just give it out too freely. And again, and I know I sound like a broken record, but y'all, please, this all comes down to self-reflecting and having that relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
Because a healthy relationship with ourselves first, it pours into the it's a peripheral thing.
Ooh,
so
it pours
it pours into the other relationships that we have. And guess what? The self-work ain't pretty. And it's not supposed to be.
It's not.
Because guess what? We have the relationships that we're used to. We have the healthy things in our life that we think are healthy, but we realize they're not. There's a lot of unpacking to do, and it takes time, it takes intentionality, and that's something that cannot be rushed.
That cannot. So that's why I want to pause. And a lot of what I've talked about in this series is slowing down to assess relationships. And what I hear from you is I have to first slow down and assess my relationship with myself. And I'm learning what are my boundaries with myself.
That's good.
So so I say that, let's use it as an example. If I continue to allow negative self-talk to lead the conversation, I'm not putting a boundary in place with myself that's saying, yes, you should be reflective. But there is a fine line between reflection and negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Because I could be honest about who I am and say, oh, wow, you know what? This is a trigger for me. Or this is, I've talked about people-pleasing issues. Like, this is an issue. Okay. But it's one thing to say, this is an issue. What are going to be your boundaries around it? And being like, oh, man, you were so stupid for doing that. Why did you do that? Why did you? And so a lot of this is, if we go back to that, what is the partnership with myself? What is my pacemaker setting with myself? And then we come to what? Parasites. I knew you was waiting on
Listen here. Those parasites, now, y'all, for real.
Yeah.
Now, if you hear nothing else that we say, your boundaries need to be nice and strong for these parasites.
They do.
They really do. Because
do.
that's going to be an interaction that will never be conducive to your growth, ever.
Yeah.
Like you can have, and sometimes that boundary does look like a hard boundary. Sometimes we have soft boundaries depending on the relationship and the magnitude of the partnership.
I have a visitor.
Hey, Kayla, what's up?
Come here, take this and go. Go ahead.
So, right, the parasites. So boundaries are also fluid. As we evolve, our boundaries should evolve.
Which is so important. They're fluid. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're fluid. So,
just do it on the steps. Play on the steps.
So
go ahead.
I know. So the parasites. This is an exact interaction where you should have hard boundaries. Because as Rev says, parasites, they want to suck the life out of you. They want to be around you because of your convenience, what you could provide with no reciprocity, right? So those are the relationships. Well, they're not relationships. They are transactional, one-sided.
Come on.
But those are the interactions that you should have some really strong limits on. Because remember, everything that we do, every interaction we have with ourselves, again, it takes intentionality. Yeah. Even Rev, when you were saying like holding yourself accountable with your self-talk, self-reflection requires action and it requires decisions, right? So it's all, a lot of this is overlapping because if we have that relationship with ourselves and we see a parasite, we're like, okay, you know what, hard boundary, I'm not willing to pour this into you because my boundaries are violated or have been violated, vice versa.
That's good. That's good. So is there anything else in the sermon that you thought about, reflected on, whether this sermon or other sermons that maybe you want to bring up today and just kind of say, man, I've been chewing on that? Or
I really liked the pacemaker. And because I'm also in like a season where I'm just really being intentional about who I share my energy with, what my relationships look like, even what I'm talking about, and who's seeding into me in like this big period of transition.
Yes.
And you even said, hey, a pacemaker may not even be a friend.
Yeah.
But it may be someone that God sent to you to get a message through.
That's it.
And that was just so powerful because sometimes you just have to take the message, be thankful, and move on, and not try and force things that aren't supposed to be.
Good.
You know, so that stuck with me.
Good.
It really resonated.
Amen. And I think it matters significantly. And it's what I said, you know, pacemakers tend to show up in the valley or show up when you're going up the mountain and you're kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work. And you're right. I love how you said even that piece, protecting your energy, because I don't think we realize how much our energy gets zapped. And that sometimes some of us cannot even set boundaries because we are so drained that we're unable. There's a wonderful book I ordered. It doesn't come out until February by Octavia Spencer.
Oh my God.
Octavia Butler, Octavia Spencer. But it's a book on rest. And one of the things she's trying to argue in this book is that rest is a boundary that we are entitled to, you know? And so she was like, sometimes, you know, my relationship with myself looks like this. Wow, I did commit to participating in this, but after the week I've had, I just need to be still. I'm in a season of my life where I'm really not going out. I'm really kind of staying in. And so like a couple people have reached out like, hey, let's hang out, let's kick it. And I've just said like, you know, you can come to my house. You know, I don't let everybody in my house, right? Because I'm protecting my energy. Our boundary. But there are certain people, you know, I will let in my house, I'll let in my personal space. And that's actually one of the things that helps me to figure out, like, are you an associate? Are you a friend? Are you kind of in between those two? Because I just feel like I just don't let everybody in that space. I'm a public figure who's always giving their energy to other people. And so I really protect the energy that goes on in my home. And so I hear you and I feel you. And I want to say, to go back to that first sermon, like, many of us need to slow down. We need to evaluate the relationship with ourselves. We need to evaluate the other relationships that we have with people and look at those. But I've also found, and this is interesting, that during the pandemic, a lot of things came up for people that they allowed the fast pace to keep them from dealing with. Then the pandemic hits, right? And now you are like slowed down, you are stuck. You have an option, right? Face these things or don't face these things. And then what has happened is people, I think, were starting to do some internal work, starting to reflect. And then it was like, oh, outside, open back up. And we have a huge faction of people that went right back to dysfunction and did not take the lessons and did not take acknowledging this isn't working for me, or this isn't healthy, or this is actually better than I thought. Either way you pan that out. Thanks, teacher, for the feedback. But it's so important, I think, that we process and that we don't, in the spirit of what I said last week and this week, that we do not take the history of a relationship and assume that it is going to feed us with the same boundaries from before into the future. Lynn says, good soup.
Yes, that is good soup. Because it's just like, if you're evolving, what makes you think that your relationships are going to look the same?
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
Anytime I think that you are in relationship, and I think particularly, and I can only speak for us because we're in this season of our lives of like in adulthood. I love to say we're in young adulthood, but we're not. Gosh,
it was good while it lasted.
It was good while it lasted. We're here. But we are still growing. Like, I think we're like, my mother and her friends are rather, yes, they're still evolving, but they're rather kind of set in their ways. And so I think that for some of us, we just cannot assume that what was is going to sustain what is. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Pastor.
No, I'm done. Go.
I'm just like really like, you're so right. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but are we willing to sacrifice just a skosh of discomfort for long-term health?
That's it.
I mean, you know, a cast may be uncomfortable with your leg, but you know it's going to heal you. You going to take that cast off? We're not going to do that. But so we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable as long as we can see the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
What is your big picture?
That is such a good question. I mean, as you evaluate, and now here's the thing. You cannot answer that in a blanket statement. You have to answer what's the big picture for you? What's the big picture for my relationship with family? And it has to go, and that even has to be broken down. What is my relationship with my mother like? What's my relationship with my father like? What's my relationship like with my siblings? Or in your instance, right, maybe cousins or self. Down into my friendships, down into my dating relationships, down into my work relationships, down into, I say grocery store relationships because it's so funny for me because, you know, I be at the grocery store and like people be like, hey, pastor, you know, so that's why I'm going to the grocery store at 4 o'clock on Saturday. Good thinking, yeah. People be, because it's a boundary. I was going to say that. So people laugh about my 4 o'clock curfew on Saturday, but it is a boundary. Watch this, because the bigger picture is that I am prepared for Sunday morning. So there's a lot of people when I started here, they got so upset. You won't do my wedding at night. You won't come to this party at night. You won't do, and I'm like, hey, it's a boundary for me. Because for me to show up Sunday morning and be unable to do my assignment because I wanted to make so-and-so happy by attending the event. And I think that it really is about priorities. And I saw someone today, I want to bring this up because it is important. I saw a colleague of mine was just kind of reflecting on that things just were not where they had hoped it would be, and they had hoped that they would have more influence by now and more, you know, all the things that I think as people who are moving forward in their career want. And what I think that individual failed to recognize, and I think that I failed to recognize it too until I arrived at this last elongated season of my life. So in the last couple of years, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. And I had to turn to somebody the other day and I said to them, never forget what my oil has cost me this season. Like everybody's been like, oh, the preaching. I don't want you to forget that this does not come from free. I know that we like to say, fresh anointing from heaven. It comes with a cost. Yeah. And the cost can sometimes, the reality is, so there's a book I read every year. It's called Leadership Pain. And that you will only grow as a leader to the threshold of your pain tolerance. Wow. That thing is deep, by Dr. Sam Chan. That's why I read it every year. Wow. And so as I process my own pain, I move through my own pain, I move through my own stuff. While I'm so thankful, and it's a strange season. I come into my office, there's letters from around the country, like, oh, this sermon, oh, that sermon, oh, this, and all of that is great, right? And that's what people are like that's what people want. But I don't think people get what it costs. And I have learned that that if I'm going to allow this oil to flow, then the very least I can do is I respect it different because I paid for it differently.
Woo-wee. Now here.
So I hear that line differently now in that song by CeCe Winans, Alabaster, where she says, you don't know the cost. So it's funny because I've preached that sermon, right? That like, oh, it's this much denarii and it's a year's worth of wages and da-da-da-da. But there is the physical cost. And then there is the spiritual cost, or there is the intangible cost, the emotional cost. Like for all of us, and I was saying to somebody today that where I'm at is pastoring for me. So this is what pastoring has become for me. Not a preaching, pastoring. I cannot pastor others without first pastoring myself.
Come on here.
And every week what you see is you get to overhear my being pastored by God. And I have the courage, you kind of heard it in the prayer today, I have the courage to share that process publicly. Watch this. Pastoring is practicing what you preach. There's a lot of preachers who don't even practice what they preach. So there are preachers who have pastor in front of their name, but they're not pastoring. I can prove it to you because we have several people who will call me up from other churches where they have a pastor, and they will say, hey, can I come to you for counseling? No, you have a pastor, you pay tithes and offerings, you go right up, oh, my pastor doesn't offer this. Here's my boundary. That's not my responsibility.
Yeah,
my responsibility is to the people of South United Church Christ. So what I've learned is it's a public relationship. I learned to pastor myself. And by teaching people how to pastor themselves, watch this, then they no longer become dependent on the church to pastor them. What am I saying? I have had to learn in the darkest seasons of my life how to pray myself through. A real pastor teaches you how to do that too. So when you call up and say, but the deacons didn't do this or you didn't do that, somewhere there's a disconnect.
Yep.
Would it be nice for us to be there? Yes. Yes. However, the reality is that my job, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It does not say, yea, though we walk. It does not say, when my pastor shows up, now I can walk. It says, you got to walk through the valley. Now, it's nice if there's other people for the ride, as you just said, to encourage you in that in-between space, to be your pacemaker. All of that is wonderful. But my newest philosophy on pastoring is that I'm actually supposed to be pastoring myself and demonstrating to others. Then somebody would say, well, then what's the point of the church? The point of the church is to be around other people like Muffie. I'm pastoring myself. She's pastoring herself together. Yes, there are times where she'll say, Pastor, I need you. And I'm glad to step in if I can. Watch this. But she gets, if I'm unable to show up, I've been sowing into you to be able to do this work yourself.
That's it. The tools.
The tools. The toolbox. That's my job.
Yes, the toolbox.
Yeah.
Because don't you want to be empowered?
Come on.
Don't you want to be empowered? Don't you want to be empowered enough to make a decision and walk through the valley knowing that you have the tools? That's growth.
And knowing that, oh my gosh, it's been a rough week. I don't know which tool to pull. Let me tune into Sunday and get a sermon. Let me join an encore group so that I have a community of people who are all working together, each individually, to do their role and do their part.
There are too many of us relying on other people for our growth.
Say that again.
There are too many of us relying on other people for our growth.
That's it.
Like you said, you did it. He was supposed to back in circa 1982.
Come on.
Let's stop.
Yeah.
And let's just take a minute and let's own the fact that we are responsible. We are responsible. We can have our peripheral people. We can have our pastors to help us through and give us the tools, but we have to make the decision.
I am simply a helper.
Yeah, that's it.
But you got to do your work. And I'm going to tell you, that's the most frustrating part of preaching and pastoring, because I'm giving this level of preaching for people to do their work.
No, and it's good.
I'm not pouring from this to solve it for you. And that's why I said back in the day, because you talk about back in the day, back in the day, I was raised in a tradition that great preaching ends with a celebration, right? I'm high, No. Great preaching leaves you with a question to wrestle with for the week. The question this week is what? Who are your parasites? Who are your partners? Who are your pace setters? Get clear about who those people are in your life. And we don't have another week of the sermon, but in his book with Darius Daniels, his next thing, he went from friends, and then he went to associates. And now the next thing is people you are on assignment. These are people, and this is like your whole life, your whole job with coaching, right? Who are the people I'm assigned to help do their work? And I've learned that the best work you can do is this. Look, I hold up a mirror for you to look at yourself, and I will hold space for you to do your work, but it's not my job to do the work.
It's not. There's not healing in that.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
But how?
But the reward.
I was gonna
Come on.
But the bigger picture. Isn't this what you want? Isn't it what you want to grow? And again, growing can have its valleys, it can have its peaks, but that is the end picture. Because once you grow and once you're reflecting enough and getting in tune enough with yourself, that comes empowerment. When you feel empowered, you can make better decisions. When you feel empowered, you can have healthy relationships.
Let me. I'm gonna use this as my last statement, and you can come in with yours. In that scripture where Jesus finds the man by the pool can't walk, he asks him this question: do you want to be made whole? And the guy comes back with excuses. He doesn't answer that question. He's like, well, the reason I can't do it is because somebody else goes down in front of the water. And he's like, but how bad do you want to be made well, right? And then one of the things that a colleague of mine, shout out to Pastor Renee Moore, who said, and one of the reasons why the Lord had the man pick up his mat, here it is so that no one falls on the thing you were unwilling to resolve yourself. And a lot of us have had, just hear me for a minute, emotional superficial breakthrough, but not really wholeness. You got an emotion, you came to church, you did your thing, you cried to get your release. And one of the biggest tricks the enemy ever played was to convince somebody that the emotional breakthrough is equivalent to the work, and it's not.
Whoa, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
go
have to be quiet.
No, you're fine.
You are like, please continue.
You're good. But that the emotional breakthrough is equivalent to the work. And that's actually the biggest trick the enemy ever played, because what happens is use the emotional breakthrough to gain the strength to do the work, but they're not equivalent. And I saw, a video the other day, somebody sent me like, oh, this pastor prayed that the chains of depression are broken. They prayed powerfully for the chains of depression to be broken. And I'm saying, as somebody who struggles with depression, and pray all the time, I still got to do my work.
That's right.
That the greatest way to be permanently out of my depression is to do my work, to put some boundaries around some things with myself, with others. And then once I have said, okay, I got it, is to pick up that mat and to not allow, for example, my son to now come sit on that mat. But I take what I've learned in my work and I now, when he's ready, and that's the key word, and that's how I parent. My job is to prepare him for adulthood, not to be a kid. I let him be a kid, but my job is to prepare him for adulthood. And so as I continue to parent him in this season, it's like, okay, is this something he needs to work on? Or is it not time for that? But it's great that you had the cry. Have it. Because the cry is going to clear it so you can see it, so you can face it, so you can strengthen it. But then at some point, you got to do the work. And everybody wants those miracles from the Bible that were like instantaneous. But those miracles are few and far in between. The real miracle is that I actually had the courage to do my work.
Woo! Can we just say that was a boneless start? We just right like I'm trying so hard just to not
you good.
To shout because I want the people to hear you, but I'm like, she is preaching, okay? That was so good, Rev. Seriously.
You give us some final comments, some final thoughts, some final lessons, and tell them also about if they shined on late, tell them again about where they can get your boundaries curriculum.
Oh, yeah, so sure. So Muffie Bradshaw on all social media platforms. If you are on Instagram, I'm Muffie Bradshaw on Instagram, and there's a boundary activity to get you started. And that's for people who really don't know where to start. They're like, oh, I don't know, like pull something from this guy. This will help you. It's a freebie activity that I think you would find helpful. So my final thoughts are this. Your boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to self-reflect. And I think I'm just gonna be done with that. Like I can't. It's hard to grab, but
you're right.
Like so that is it. That is it. And self-reflection is a whole nother topic in itself. But your boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to self-reflect. That's it. That's it.
And we're going to talk to Muffie, but what we'll try to do, if it's okay, is we'll try to share that with the entire congregation.
Absolutely.
Boundaries and bring them back to you, and that will give you a good place to continue to do this work. Listen, as you move into the holiday seasons, and as we've talked about boundaries, I believe you're going to see a lot of them or the lack of them come up, right? Holidays do this to us.
Yes.
Pay attention.
Yes.
And then do your work. Reflect, pray, slow down, assess, and God will indeed give you what you need.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Rev. I love you so much. Thank you so much.
My first best friend, Muffie Bradshaw. We love y'all. Share this with somebody. Tell them like, hey, check this out. Because we brought you the push today for the first time. Love y'all. Peace. Bye.